Everyone, welcome back to another Peaceful Solution Character Education Correspondence course or certification course. Correspondence for many of you that are overseas watching at this time, certification for many others. Everyone can be seated if you're standing. I know there's still a lot of people coming in. The rain comes and goes in Texas right now fairly quickly. So please just take your time getting in, get your seats, and we'll get started here. If everybody will be turning over to page 143, we're going to have a little bit of a review where David left off last class. And, of course, we're finishing up the 6th chapter of the character unit. And for those of you that might be wondering, we're in the junior high series. It's the first series of the junior high series, the character unit. It's unit 1. And once again, you can download it for free if you're watching on our Facebook page. It's at the very top of the page. It's a PDF file. You can download it for free, and it is a teacher's edition copy, which will have all of the lesson plans. You'll have all the procedures that go with these things, and of course you'll have the answers also to the questions that you'll be giving your students. It helps you put things together. It gives you tips, and it gives you ideas on how to add to the class itself. But on page 143, we're finishing up the What I Have Learned section of chapter 6, which is entitled, I Can Make a Difference. And we're building upon the chapters that came before that and just figuring out what character and personality was, and then talking about family life in general, and then learning how to become a very important person. And then we get into the parts of leadership and the ripple effect and how the things we do will ripple outwardly. And we're going to get into all of those things too as we finish up chapter 6 and into chapter 7 tonight. But that's just to give you an idea of everything we're building upon. Where we're at right now consists of all the chapters before it. But turning over to page 143, hold your spot there, and we're going to go back and remind ourselves of what procedure we're on, because the procedure David started, that's the one we're going to complete tonight. So procedure 8, it's found on LP6E, procedure 8 on LP6E, that means lesson plan 6, and of course the pages are numbered in the lesson plans by letters, so it's page E. And it says, encourage students to read the section entitled, What I Have Learned, on page 143. Conclude the lesson by reminding students that moral character can help them develop leadership skills and abilities that can make a difference in their lives and the lives of others all over the world. And we're seeing that. You know, those are not just words alone. We're actually seeing that where other countries have started organizations using the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program curricula, because we have such a vast curricula that covers many things in great detail, getting down into the very aspects of what we need to hear in life, not just putting colorful words with things, but giving us the aspects of how to make sound decisions and how to conduct ourselves in a positive way and how to be a benefit to others. Now, last week, David covered, starting with the first bullet point there on 143, and we'll go through the first 4 fairly quickly because he covered them in detail. And if you didn't get to see that, you can go back and watch the last class. It's there up on Facebook. You can watch it. It's already recorded for you, and you can watch all of that and put it all together with what we're going over tonight. So the first bullet point, where leaders are an important part of our society, and that the basis and quality of leadership starts and ends with moral character. You know, and he covered pages 105 to 130, and you can write these pages down so you'll have them. Pages 105, which was the ripple effect, how they ripple outwardly, and pages 130, 126, 127, and 132. So a little bit slower here, pages 130, 126, 127, and 132. And those were the pages, some of the pages that he gave to help us put these things together so we can go back and tie these things in together as we're teaching our students, because we're continually trying to remind them of what they've already learned, because we learn through repetition. That's how we become a very important person. If you remember the practice by putting these things into play. The second bullet point he covered was negative leaders can help to bring about hatred and violence. And of course, we went over some negative leaders that have been in this world today with Adolf Hitler and Papa Doc, so to speak. And really quickly, let me tell you what page those were on so you can turn over to them when you need them. They're on page 128, and it was identifying leadership styles. And we give examples of positive and negative leaders. And we show how their choices and the effects of their choices were going out and spreading through their communities. And we can see even in today's society, and I'm not going to call a leader negative or positive, but if you want to know, you just look at the results of the decisions they make. If you're looking to see whether a leader is a positive leader or a negative leader, look at the results of the decisions and the directions they guide the people in. And if what they tell the people to do or the direction they give the people brings harm to themselves, someone else, or the environment, we know that that would be a negative leader. And it brings about this hatred and violence. It builds frustration in people. It builds a lot of frustration in people to where we see what we can turn on the TV and see today in not just one nation, but in nations all around the world. A true hatred to where people are just walking down the street and getting shot. Where people are sitting at a drive-thru at a fast food restaurant and their children get shot because of two other people fighting. Innocent people dying, missiles being launched, bombs being dropped. It's a never-ending cycle. And we have to look at ourselves as a society and even as teachers in a classroom, because everybody has a developed hatred for things they can't explain why they dislike them. And when I say everybody, we all have something we dislike, and we have to identify it because sometimes we can be in the wrong. You know, and hate's a very strong word when you see here hatred and violence. And when we say, oh, I hate this country, you know, and I'll give you an example. When I was growing up in the 1980s, we had what was known as the Cold War, and everybody I knew that I went to school with just disliked the Soviet Union. And I always wondered why. Why am I supposed to dislike the Soviet Union? I've never been there, don't know really anything about it. I just feel there's shows on TV that make it look really bad, but why am I supposed to dislike it? We see in society where people are raised to hate one nationality or another, or even down to the color of skin. People are taught this hatred and violence. And when people are taught this comes from negative leaders that teach these things, to hate, to dislike, because of the nationality of a person or a color of a skin. And remember who we said the first teachers were in a person's life, the parents or the guardians. If we put this into the minds of children to dislike someone because their skin's a little darker, they're a little south of the border than we are, or they're a lot south of the border, or they're a little bit more northern than we are, or they're all the way on the other side of the earth, you know, we have to really consider what's being put into the mind and what are we, because as parents, you're leaders. As teachers in the classroom, we're leaders. And many teachers are finding out that when the students come in with hatred and violence, it starts in the home 99% of the time. And sometimes it's not even the parents that are intentionally teaching the negativity, but it's, well, the video game does a lot of occupying the time. And I let them play it continually. Well, what game do they play? I don't know, but there's a lot of shooting and killing. The more they kill, the more points they score. You know, when you think about this, well, who's teaching who? What's being done? And if we think, well, I didn't teach my child to do these things. As teachers, as they're making appointments to deal with parents because the students are coming in with very negative behavior, they see the results of it. Parents sometimes don't. Sometimes teachers are with the students more than the parents are. Student comes home to the parent's house. They go in their room and play video games until it's time to eat. And then they go back into their room again. Well, when they come to school, they're stuck in the classroom for 7, 8, 9 hours a day sometimes, depending on what school system they're in. That adds up to a lot of pressure. And parents always look and go, that can't be my child. My child's so well behaved. They come home, they go to their room, I never hear a word. Well, what are we teaching them by allowing them to do that? That's not always a positive thing. But notice here, David covered the third bullet point, and it says, on the other hand, positive moral leaders motivate and encourage others to do their best and to achieve positive goals without unfairly taking from or harming someone else. And that's giving encouragement. That's not stepping on somebody, you know, putting someone down so you can put yourself up. That's not something that's positive. That's always being very demeaning. You know, and a lot of times when people want to build themselves up, they do it by putting someone else down. And that's something that brings, that can bring a division between the best of friends. That can cause a lot of anger and hatred in itself between two people. And of course, he covered pages 129 and 132 in discussing about what we can do to actually help people make positive decisions and not treat people unfairly. And the fourth bullet point David covered, and this was the last one he covered, was everyone is capable of learning how to lead. A potential leader is first willing to be trained. And that's very important. Every person is capable of learning to lead. And a lot of people go, no, not me. I can't be a leader. If you're going to be a parent, you don't really have a choice. You can't have children and look at someone else and go, here, this is my child, now you lead them. Well, they can teach them, but they're going to have to send them back home. They're going to have to send them back to the parents. It's parents' responsibility. That's part of having a child, is being responsible and taking hold of the child and leading and guiding. Now, as parents, of course, we live in a very busy society and we need others to assist in teaching, and we want to trust them. We want to trust those teachers to guide and teach our children. But we as parents, we stand behind the teachers, those teaching the peaceful solution. We stand behind them. And then, of course, we have to reinforce. When I say reinforce, I mean stand behind. Because the peaceful solution doesn't teach bringing harm to a child. It doesn't teach, bringing any kind of an effect to a child's life that is damaging. It doesn't cause that at all. Now, there might be possibly some times to where you tell a child you need to go to your room and clean it before you eat supper. And of course the child, I'm starving to death. I'll never make it through the night. Well, that's fine. You still need to go clean your room and then you can have supper. I'll never get it done. Well, you'll know not to let your room be that dirty next time. But I'm sure you can clean it well enough to where you can come eat. Now, the children, you might just have, they're just starving me to death. They don't feed me. And if you're a parent, I'm sure you've heard that at least once, to where they're so dramatic, and then they come back up like 5 minutes later. Did you get it clean? Yeah, it's clean. 5 minutes, really? You argued for 10. You cleaned it up in 5. But not only have I seen that, I remember doing that when I was a child. It's just we didn't get to do it for that long. You got one comment in, and that was all was allowed. There was no more comments after that. You went and done it. But, it teaches responsibility. It teaches that everybody has to put forth their part into this family. And to be a leader, we must first, once again, learn to be willing to be trained so we can actually be guided and taught, because no one is a born leader. And we'll get into that as we move throughout the units, that people are trained to be leaders, but you're not born with all of these things. You're taught these things. And of course, hatred is the same way. You're not born to hate someone. You're taught to hate someone or something. So picking up here, after covering those points, we're going to get to the 5th point, and it's learning to be a positive leader can be achieved by combining my positive character traits with personality and skills. So if you could, turn over to page 130. Turn over to page 130 and this bullet point we're looking at here. And it picks right up off the bullet point before that. So looking down in the 2nd paragraph, because once again, as you're turning over there to page 130, looking at the 2nd paragraph, I'll read the bullet point one more time. And it says, learning to be a positive leader can be achieved. So it's a goal that's possible. It's not an unrealistic goal. It's a realistic goal. It's something we can do. And it can be done by combining positive character traits with personality and skills. So with personality and skills. And looking under here at the 2nd paragraph on page 130, and we just talked about how anyone can be a leader. They just have to be trained. The 2nd paragraph says, leading others requires character, personality, and skills. And remember what skills are. When you want to be great at something, children want to do things in society today. Everybody wants to be the all-star basketball player, football player, baseball player. And those are some of the examples to give, because children, young adults, especially in middle school and high school, that have these great ambitions of getting scholarships, well, what do when they want to be great at something? They practice, and they practice, and they practice, and they practice. Even when they're playing video games and they want to be great at the video game, what do? They practice, and they practice, and they practice. Well, depending on what you're practicing, you're going to get the results of what you practice. Well, here we're talking about being a positive leader. And we're talking about developing the character, the personality, and the skills to be a positive leader. And that requires practice and practice and more practice. Doesn't mean that we won't make mistakes. It just means we'll learn from them. So once again, leading others requires character, personality, and skills. But to be the very best, you must develop a positive character and a harmless and helpful personality. And that's exactly what teachers, when someone goes into the field of teaching, they do it not for the money, but for the desire to help others, for the desire to help people better themselves. And that's exactly what the Peaceful Solution was designed to do. When the author created this program and put it together, it was to be a tool that a teacher could use, along with the reading, writing, and arithmetic that is also very needed in life. But without character and knowing how to be a positive person, the rest of it doesn't really help you very much. Now, it goes on to say that you already know that you must maintain and develop a positive character on a daily basis. And once again, the maintaining, I remember David used a car and talked about changing the oil and maintaining the very basics that's needed to cause a car to run to its best ability. And then, of course, developing. We've referred to that as growing things, fruit trees, so to speak, we gave examples of, where you have to nurture and take care of it. And you just don't neglect it. You have to continually make sure that it's growing, and that if there's anything wrong with it, if anything comes up that could hurt it, you treat that, you get rid of it, you do something to cause the negative effects to go away. And that can require a lot of work here. But we're talking about this maintaining and developing. So you're maintaining what you have and you're growing it. It's always growing. It's never a point to where it stops growing, because we live in a very advanced world to where technology today tends to be obsolete 15 years from now. But this maintaining and developing a positive character, notice, on a daily basis. So 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and you'll always have students go, so on leap year I can be negative one day, right? So always address that leap year deal. We have teachers that were born on that leap year day, and they remind me all the time of that. But students will, and when they do that, at least it lets you know they're paying attention. So always listen to these things for your students, because even sometimes when they'll make a sarcastic comment, at least they're listening, and you can keep working with them. It's the ones that you ask a question and they're like, what? That's when you got to go back and repeat again. Just say it over again, and they'll get it. Slowly but surely they'll get it. But as the author says, if you don't hear the tree fall, you'll never know what was there to begin with. When this lesson is taught, if you don't hear it, you won't know how to apply it. Well, once again, as for skills, well, you can learn the skills relevant to leadership in the same way you learn all of your other skills. Once again, you practice, practice, practice. And if you don't have it, you should have right there page 73, and that takes you back to the value, imitate, practice page that we went over in chapter 3 that helped the students get the idea of course, values being found on page 6. That's something you deem important. Well, most children, if you ask them, or young adults really, if you ask them at 16, what do you value right now most in life? They're going to say a car, because I can get my driver's license now. Would you know how to take care of a car? You get in it and you turn the key, and mom and dad put gas in it, and you just put it in drive and you go. Well, when I was 16, I kind of thought that was the way it worked too, until one day somebody brought me an oil filter and 5 quarts of oil and told me to change the oil. And I felt kind of ignorant, and there was no YouTube to go watch, so I drove it to school, and I asked the teacher that was teaching shop to show me how to change the oil. And when I got back home, the funny part was, my dad asked me, did you change the oil? Yeah, I had someone show me. Because I never said I wouldn't teach you. I just told you to get it done. You never asked. And I thought, well, that makes a lot of sense, didn't it? If I'd asked, you would have showed me. And, and eventually he did show us things to help us show how to maintain a car. And I learned very young that just maintaining cars is not all it's cracked up to be. You spend a lot of time doing things, spark plugs this and, this and that, and now it's got to have shocks because I drove too hard on rocky roads. But these were things where you didn't realize through lack of education, I didn't, that there's certain things that abuse parts of a car that break it down. Well, there's certain things that we do to abuse our bodies or even our character that break them down. And if someone points it out to us, we should thank them, because that helps us to put ourselves where we move forward a little faster. But if no one ever tells us that what we're doing is damaging, a car is one thing. We're talking about character and personality. We're talking about life. If no one ever tells us that we're doing something that brings harm, it's kind of hard to fix life, especially once something's damaged beyond repair. It's not like a car where you can take and replace the part. It doesn't work that way with human life. And especially when people get into, we see states of depression with COVID today and a lot of mental breakdowns. We've talked about the lack of teaching and the unwanted pregnancies taking place and the millions of abortions that are taking place right now that through education could be a little different, could be a lot different. But we have to make sure we take that step. Just telling someone they did something wrong is not enough. We have to teach them how to do it right. If someone always tells you, just think of something that you didn't know how to do till someone showed you. And it could be anything. If someone always come to you every day and said, that's not how you do it. And the next day they come to you and that's not how you do it. And then a year later, that's still not how you do it. A positive leader will tell them how to do it right, instead of just telling you you're doing it wrong. And sometimes they might not even know how to do it right themselves. They just know that's not the proper way. They'll find the way to teach you and themselves on how to do it right. And that's what a positive leader does. Anyone can criticize, but a positive leader gets involved to show how, and we have to realize that criticism isn't someone teaching us that we can better ourselves in life. That's not criticism. Criticism is where you put someone down and you offer no guidance on how to fix it. That is a negative thing. But when you offer guidance on how to be a better person in a very, as we've seen, harmless and caring way, helpful way, that's what a positive leader does. And along with those positive leader achievements we're talking about here, if you look over to page 131 and 132, we see here being a positive leader, we have 10 examples here of these skills that leaders develop. And we'll read through them real quickly. And you can go back and read them in detail later, or you can go back and actually see the class where we covered these things. It was just a few weeks ago to help you build your mind and firmly establish these in your mind. But here at the very top of the page, it says, be a positive leader. And notice it says all positive leaders share specific qualities and skills. So this is something that identifies a positive leader. Everyone shares this. How many of these character traits and skills do you have? And this was a self-examination that we went through. And of course, you never go through and you're never the perfect 10 leader whenever you go through it for the first time, the 10th time, the 20th time, but we're working toward getting there. And the very first one is positive leaders lead by example. And of course, the second was positive leaders are respectful. And we went over what it means to be respectful, to show care, consideration, and concern. And we also talked about how respect is deserved. Everyone deserves respect. Respect is not something we earn. It's something that is deserved. Everybody deserves to be respected. And number 3 was positive leaders are responsible for their actions. They don't blame other people when things go wrong. They take the responsibility for what goes wrong and their part in it. And positive leaders, number 4, positive leaders are compassionate. Of course, showing compassion, working toward doing the things that are right and proper, and putting themselves, you can put empathetic in that, putting yourself in someone else's shoes. Watching someone who does something wrong and realizing they did it wrong, but did anyone ever show them to do it right? And I can tell you, one time I thought, I want to learn how to play a guitar. That's what I want to do. And I had somebody that was very patient in showing me. And I just didn't have the desire to put that much time into it. I thought I was going to sit down and you just show me how to play it and I'm done. I'm going to go home and play songs. No, it didn't work that way. And it's something that the person teaching was very compassionate, even to the point they looked and like, well, you're not going to learn to play in one night. It's going to take a lot of practice. And I thought, well, you only have 24 hours in a day. And you can only give so much time to so many things. And I'm already down to 4 hours of sleep at night, so I probably need to sleep some. And it became, I just don't have time for this. And that's part of realizing some things that even if you want to do them, just not might have time to do them. Because one thing you can't give up is studying to be a positive person, and going to classes and learning to do so. And as people are watching that are teachers to learn how to teach the peaceful solution, they've been through college. They've been through 12 years of school. They've taught, we've met teachers that have taught for 15 and 20 years that say we've never seen curricula that teaches this, but we know there's a curricula that is needed that teaches this. But the only way you get the reward is to put it forth. And the reason I bring that up, because the positive leader of the peaceful solution, the author, was very compassionate. And he had compassion when he put this program together with a whole body of teachers. It was the compassion that he's seen on a world that was suffering, and young people and older people alike that were suffering. And this was something that was put out to help the whole world. And it was truly put out with no thought of monetary gain, no thought of look what it does for me, but just to help people. And that's why you can download those books for free. There's no charge for them. That's why if you call and request something from the Peaceful Solution, no matter what country you're in, we'll do our very best to get it to you as quickly as possible. So think about those things when you're thinking about the Peaceful Solution. If you need something, let us know. We'll be more than glad to help you. You can always contact us through our website or through the Facebook page you're watching on right now. But our website is www.peacefulsolution.org. And it's posted there in the information section of our Facebook page. So please always contact us and ask questions and see how we can help you. And then, of course, the fifth one here was positive leaders are diligent and steadfast. So they're very quick to get things done. They don't let it linger. If there's a problem, they work on it or they address it. And being steadfast, they stand on the positive parts of what needs to be done. Now, that doesn't mean you slam your foot down, and you don't realize that in training someone, like the person I gave the example teaching me how to play the guitar, it didn't sound too great when I did it. Sure sound nice when he did it, but when I did it, it didn't sound too great, and he was steadfast in his patience. Now, he could have picked it up. I've seen videos where guitar teachers finally just take the guitar from the person and beat it in the ground to save the guitar and the misery that's coming itself. That's not being very steadfast. As teachers of the Peaceful Solution, we have to be someone who realizes there's goals worth pursuing and we see those things through. It goes right along with being diligent. Also here in number 6, positive leaders are decisive. And this is knowing when you know what needs to be done, you get it done. You don't consider, well, this is not the proper way, but it'd be easier to do. No, a positive leader, even though it might be more difficult, even though it might take more time, they have the patience, the compassion to see it through, and you do it the right way. It's kind of like when you go to paint something and it needs to be primed first, and you're like, I don't really want to spend the time priming it. Or it says you're spray painting something and it says allow 2 to 3 hours for cure so you can put the next coat on. But you're 30 minutes later, you're spraying away again. Why? I didn't want to wait. Don't do it below 50 degrees. A little warm up sometime today. Don't do it when it's humid. If you've ever done wood before, and I know men and women both like to refinish things in their houses, you learn very quickly if you spray clear coat on something on a humid day, it turns very cloudy because all of that humidity gets into your finish. And you wonder, well, why? Because there's rules to it. There's rules to doing everything in life. There's nothing in life we can do that doesn't have a rule, and if you think, I think I can get by without rules, then wait till no one's on the road, but drive around town and don't obey any rules and see how far that gets you. You'll at least get a free meal in the morning and a warm bed tonight. That's guaranteed because they're going to arrest you for doing it. You just can't go do things like that. And we have to learn in society and think about this. And I say that in jest, don't ever do something like that, because think of how many people's lives are put in danger when people don't keep the rules. And of course, positive leaders are decisive, and I'm not saying narrow-minded, but you look in a very positive way. Positive leaders will listen to things, but they'll always stick to what is the right thing to do, and they're decisive in that way. In number 7, it says positive leaders are humble. And of course, that part of that, even a positive leader, it's not that a positive leader doesn't make mistakes. A positive leader will, of course, acknowledge when they're wrong also. And we're all wrong. At some time, we all do something that's wrong. It's not beyond us. We're human. Number 8 was positive leaders are assertive. Now, assertive, that goes along with being courageous. Doesn't mean forceful, because I know assertive can mean courageous, it can mean determined, but it can mean forceful also. And when I say forceful, that means the old saying that my teacher used to give us in the 11th grade was, come hell or high water, you're going to do what I say. And I never understood what that meant, but I understood that means we don't have a choice. But I didn't know what high water meant, and I still don't know what it means to this day, but it sounded pretty threatening back then. And they would throw books through the classroom too. So it wasn't a very positive thing. But being assertive means, you can, think of energizing somebody. You ever see someone that's down and you go to them, you try to build them up, you try to help them to understand, hey, we can get this done. Being courageous, taking hold of the challenge. Number 9, positive leaders are confident. And that confidence comes from doing what is right. Confidence comes from doing what is right and knowing what needs to be done. It doesn't mean proudful to where I never make a mistake and no one can correct me because I don't do anything wrong. That would be foolish. But confident is knowing that if you're doing something that's according to the rules, there's nothing to worry about. It'll all work out. Then number 10, positive leaders use all of their positive character traits to motivate and encourage others. And that's very important because being part here of the Peaceful Solution, why teachers like the Peaceful Solution, it helps people to help build up others. It's not just building up ourselves, but helping to build up others to help them, as the page we've quoted many times here, the page 117 in the character unit, which is the page we call the hope page, to give everybody the determination and the know that they can make a difference in their lives and in the lives of others. They can do that. So very quickly, turn back over here to page 143 so we can cover the next bullet point we have here. And we're looking at the 6th one. And it's the goal of being a leader is not to boss people around or always be in charge. Rather, leadership is a way to serve and will help me maintain my positive character and help me gain, notice, the courage and skills to make a difference in my life and in the world around me. And of course, if you'll turn over to page 129, where we covered there's a leader in you. Page 129, and the very bottom of the page here, the second paragraph, it says one of the keys to learning how to lead, and notice learning how to lead, is to maintain your positive character. You might suddenly find yourself in a situation where everyone is doing the wrong thing. Knowing how to be a positive leader can help you get yourself and others out of a bad situation. Sometimes making a difference means taking the initiative and having the courage to stand up for what is right. You never know when, through your positive leadership, you might encourage someone else to make the right choice. And of course, that's the goals that we all have, is to help people make the right choice. And if you ever get a role of leadership, and if you think it's, no, everybody listens to me, now I'm the boss, that's the first sign that you're missing something to learning to be a positive leader. If you have to yell at someone and put them down to think that's going to cause them to do their job, that's a negative leader. Positive leader would never do such a thing. Now, that doesn't mean if you see something falling from the second story to the first story, you don't yell and tell them to get out of the way. I'm talking about where you yell obscenities at someone. And that's something that's very negative. And that's not helping someone build the goal. It's not helping someone see that they have value and that they can accomplish things either. Also, turn over to page 133, and we're thinking about these courage and skills and how we establish goals. And sometimes knowing what to do and knowing how we need to do it is knowing what we don't need to do and what not should be done. And notice here you have what leadership is not. And you have of course, the leadership acronym here to help us remember the things, but we also have three important points right here. And as we said in the bullet point, leadership is not bossing people around. It's teaching people. You know, and there's a huge reward that comes from teaching someone. And it doesn't mean you have to teach them how to, you know, build a house, how to rebuild a motor in a car, how to be a beautician. It doesn't mean you have to teach them some kind of skill. Sometimes it's just teaching them that they can be a better person. They actually have the potential to improve themselves. They can actually make decisions that doesn't bring harm to themselves. There's a lot of times you'll deal with people that are bringing harm to themselves, self-harm. And we'll get into that later on in the units, but you can help them realize that's not something you should be doing, and this is something you can get past. But the first thing you have to do is not only see the value in yourself as a person, but the value of your life to society. If you only tell a person you're valuable, well, they only see the value if you show them what can they do to contribute to society or to other people's lives. We can all lock ourselves in a house and say we're valuable, but we don't really feel valuable unless we see the benefit we're bringing to others. And sometimes what one person considers to be a very small thing can be very huge to other people. You know, I thought about that in Abilene here. I was driving down the road the other day, and I seen we have a curb sweep machine now that's sweeping all the curbs. And I thought, man, what a waste of money. And then I went to the next block where he hadn't got there yet, and it was like, man, what a filthy street. I thought, I like that curb machine. It actually looks a lot better once he's done. You know, so I very quickly thought, well, I'm glad I didn't say anything. You know, I'm glad I didn't make a fool of myself. But it's nice to see things that are clean, and that's probably considered a very small job, but I like the results from it, and I'm sure the city does. It makes things look better when you have a business that's on that street. It's more representable. Well, the second thing that we see here that a leader is not, it says leadership is not using fear or threatening people to do things. This is called being a bully. And we'll get to certain parts of what it means to be a bully once we get into the self-control unit and the respect unit. But, of course, anytime we have to threaten someone to do a job or threaten them, especially when you think about young people very quickly will throw their hands up and walk away. If they feel like they're being threatened to where they have to make a choice to do something that they might not fully even understand, and that's the one thing that we have to make sure that we've done before we start wondering why they're not doing it right. Because of choice, we have to wonder, have they been educated well enough? And we can say, well, they've been taught 100 times. There's things that I've been told 100 times, and under pressure, someone can ask me a question, and I won't even know where to look for it. I'll know what it says. I know what the answer is, but I still, well, where's that at? I have no idea. And there's a lot there that can be, think about a mind of a child, a mind of a young adult. Just because someone is doing something that's not appropriate, sometimes it could be just a lack of education or the lack of them knowing how to direct certain things. Frustrations turn into anger sometimes, for example. And then, of course, the third one here, it says, leadership is not about benefiting oneself, but rather based on showing concern to all those involved. Remember, one of the attributes of being a great leader is to recognize and encourage others to use their skills and to learn from others. And that's one thing that everybody can do. Everybody can contribute to society, to a city, to a town, to a country, globally. Everybody has that potential, but they just have to be shown how. When you think about the things that we enjoy today, no one, Henry Ford didn't have to make a car. They didn't have to, and he made a car before there were gas stations all over the place. We tend to think, well, when Henry Ford made cars, there were gas stations everywhere. There were no gas stations. He had to go in and make agreements with people to get his idea to grow. And what we see today is very different than what took place in that day. Well, character education at one time was something that should just be taught at home. But after 20 years of the Peaceful Solution working very hard to get this into schools and the teachers seeing the benefit of it, people have realized we need this curricula and we need to be teaching this curricula to our students. So once again, it goes through the vision, and this being the vision of a person, an author, because of something his father said to him when he was very young, and seeing it through. It's actually having a goal and seeing it through to the end. Well, of course, here, what I have learned, back to what I have learned section, we went over those, what a positive leader is, what leadership is not. And of course, it's not bossing people around. And think about, where's the first time, if you have siblings, when is the first time you were given the position of leadership and you bossed someone around? It's when mom or dad left your younger sibling with you and said, now you need to make sure everything goes okay. Make sure they do this and they do that. And as soon as mom and dad leaves the house, it's all right, I'm in charge now. This is my house and we'll do it my way. And mom and dad come back and everything was wrong. Well, that's what he did. Well, no, you were in charge. You were the king of your castle at that moment. Somebody else's castle, but you claimed to be the king of it. This is things that I say this in jest, but if you've ever had siblings, then you know how it is. If you grew up by yourself and you were left home by yourself when you were older, well, did you keep the rules of the house or did you break them a little bit? Because we have these things, remember, the leadership is doing what needs to be right even when no one else is looking. And we've covered that and we'll cover it some more. But back here on page 143, we're on the, let's turn to, just for your notes, turn over to page 125 so you'll have this one with this bullet point. Page 125, and in the second paragraph, notice it says, whose responsibility is it to ensure a safe world for you to grow up in? And think about that. And as teachers, ask your students this, because you'll learn a lot about their way of thinking. Whose responsibility is it for you to grow up in a safe world? Well, who do you think it starts with? It starts with yourself. That's where the responsibility starts. It's not everybody else's problem. Everybody else plays a part in that. And when we went through the first introductory page of the ripple effect, we talked about how society is governed by a common body of laws. But laws and rules mean absolutely nothing if people aren't adhering to the rules. And if we think that it's everybody else's responsibility to make life safe for us, well, we have to look at ourselves first and then outwardly. Not outwardly and then back to ourselves. We do have to consider what we allow ourselves to be around, but we have to know that our responsibility starts with us. And notice it says here, the truth of the matter is your future is too important to hope that someone else will make a difference. It's up to each and every person to consistently demonstrate character skills. Remember, we develop those skills through practice that will result in peace between individuals, society, and the world. Notice this is the only way to ensure your future society will be safe and secure for all people. And one example, and I'll give you this example, and it's not to put down two nations, it's not to degrade anybody, but it's to show how the cycle of hatred and violence can continue. And when you think of two nations that have continually battled for endless years, you think of Palestine and Israel. And we even spoke in the sixth chapter, or the fifth chapter, with the ripple effect, about how even peace treaties can be signed between nations. But when nations are taught to hate each other, and once again, hatred has to be taught, peace treaties, words alone will not bring the peace. You have to change the mindset, because responsibility starts with the individuals that live there. We have to change that. And one thing we learned when we went to Argentina, we went there and we were teaching English-speaking classes in Argentina, and I never noticed we have a logo. And I'd never noticed it before, but when we were in Argentina, one of our logos has a soldier, and he's specifically standing on Argentina, the nation Argentina. And one of the ladies said, I can't believe an American would put a soldier on Argentina when America has wars going everywhere. And I looked at her, I said, I'm not a person that's usually speechless, but now I'm speechless. I said, I never thought about that. And it wasn't the intention of the peaceful solution to cause it to look like Argentina promoted war. It was kind of show what's in a global scale. But we very quickly realized, you can do things unintentionally that can easily offend people. And we apologized, and we went back to using our other logo while we were there, because we didn't really want to, our intention was not to offend. And she was right. If you're going to put a logo like that on something, probably should put it on your nation that you're from. That would probably be a better place to put it. And, we learned from that. And it wasn't a big thing, but it was something that we could have looked and made a really big, well, you just have to learn, lady. It's this, this, and that. No, she was right. She was right in what she said, and she said it very politely. And, we learned from that. And this is something that we always want to make sure that we do. We never think that, no, we're in the right. There's no way we're wrong in this issue. We're always learning. And sometimes even a child can come up and teach you something when you're 50, 60 years old. A 5-year-old child can come up and teach you something and help us all. And that's what the Peaceful Solution is all about, just acknowledging and moving forward. Now, here to the second to last bullet point. We kind of covered it already, but I wanted to read that, tying it back to the goal of being a leader. It says, my future, my safety are too important to wait for others to make a difference. And that's what we just read here on page 125, where we're the ones that have to make the difference. And it's a challenge as teachers that are learning to teach this program, and as other countries. I try to tell people, and it's more than, if you're here at the training facility in Abilene, you're more than welcome to join into classes we teach overseas to watch the issues that come up and arise. Because sometimes, as we're here in America, we're very benefited. That's not probably the way to say it. We don't have the challenges that other people have in one aspect, and then some aspects we have much more challenges than other nations have. When you're teaching a country where you have cartel or you have terrorist groups, it is extremely difficult to get them to believe that we can make a difference when people are being murdered in very bizarre ways in their cities they live in. And they're like, hey, if you challenge that here, you'll die. Well, you're not challenging anything. You're not out to condemn people. You're out to help people have a better life. You're not there to teach against a cartel or a terrorist organization. You're teaching people how to make better decisions. You're teaching people how to make your country better. You're not there to, you're not on a campaign to shut down drug cartel, avocado cartel. There is an avocado cartel that will do very bad things to you. But these are things that you have to instill in their minds, that if your country, and all of our countries had negative things. The United States has some very negative things in itself. We have different things than South America has, and they're different than Africa, which is different than Europe, which is different than Asia. We all have challenges in life. But if we don't think that we can make a difference through practicing positive leadership skills, then who's going to do it? It's not a train that goes by and once it's safe, we'll get on. You have to actually build the tracks and build the train and get the train to come by first. We used to have a teacher that used to tell everybody to get on the peace train, because we had this huge group of motorhomes that would travel from school to school to school to school. And that was the slogan there, get on the peace train. But we were trying to take the initiative to do so. And we're still trying every day to take the initiative to take this to anywhere that someone wants to hear it. And many teachers do want to hear it and they want to use it. But even teachers will tell you, everything you have, I agree with. But getting the children to believe it, that's the greatest challenge. Yeah, and it's a challenge because of the competition you're up against. If you give a child a book to read, in the United States, well, what else do they have they can go do? Then they have the TV, and you only have, 150, 200 channels these days? If you can't find something on there, then you go play a video game. And how many video games do they have these days? Well, we have to get this future and safety. We have to get them to understand you do have to live with the decisions you make. And sadly, we have talked to young children, I say 14, 15, and 16, who they'll come and go, I understand that my future is based on my decisions. How? Because I have HPV. Because I have herpes. It's never going to go away. I have it forever. That's horrible when you hear someone that's 14 years old, 15 years old come tell you that. Or you're in a juvenile facility And they're sitting there going, I never thought I would be sitting here. And we went through this in Laredo, Texas. A young man, he goes, I never thought I'd be sitting here realizing I'm 15 years old and my life is gone. We didn't know what they did. He was just sharing with us. So I asked him, well, why do you think your life is gone? They're charging me with murder. I'm not going anywhere anytime soon. And he was right. He wasn't going anywhere anytime soon. But that one bad choice that he made, he's going to have to live with it. And I'm sure he's still living with it for many, many years to come. But he could have made a difference. And, I tell you, when you deal with children, especially teachers in schools, and when they're making bad choices, don't weigh the life of a person on one bad choice, because their future is not made on one decision. You can lose your whole future on one decision, but if someone does something that makes a negative choice and it could cost safety in the classroom, if it causes drastic harm, of course, that needs to be dealt with appropriate measures. But if someone does something and it could lead to something that's dangerous, well, explain it and show how it could lead to something that was severely dangerous, but don't treat it like the actual thing took place and now someone has suffered. Sometimes we can overburden a child's mind with consequences. And when I say that, if a child runs out into the street to get a ball, that's a very dangerous thing to do. Now, if they didn't get hit by a car, there's no use to sit there for the next 3 hours and tell them what occurs when they're hit by a car. There's nothing wrong with telling them what can take place and going through it thoroughly. But to, refer to a child as, well, you know how ignorant you are, ran right out in the street to get that ball, that's where a negative leader gets involved. And it could be, I just give that as an example, it could be anything. But, consider about this future and safety and how it's too important to wait. Saying that is one thing, getting a child to understand that and to believe it, that's where the challenge comes from to teachers. That's the challenge. And the last point here that was made in the 6th chapter is, I don't have to be an adult to be a leader. I can begin leading others now by encouraging them to obtain a positive character and to respect others through my example. If you turn over to page 129, that's where we see there's a leader in you. In the very first paragraph here, it says, of course, not everyone will become a government, community, or religious leader, but in every person's life, there is an opportunity to lead. Have you ever considered that your teacher is a leader? If your parents supervise others or are managers on the job, they too are leaders. You also might be called upon to be a leader. The fact is, leading others does not have an age limit. So regardless of how young or old you are, you can learn how to lead and value being a positive leader. Sooner or later, everyone is asked to lead in one way or another. You might be asked to lead a group project, or you might be chosen as a captain of a team, so be prepared. I can tell you, there was a school I recently visited this last week, and I went into this school, and there were, I think, 6 or 7 students. And, of course, the teacher of the school is a student of the Peaceful Solution. So this is someone that watches classes and has taken classes here in Abilene, and now they're teaching in a school themselves, teaching others in a country. And when I walked in, they introduced me to all of the students. And very quickly, they were asking questions. So I asked them something. Teach me something in Spanish, because I can't speak Spanish very well. And I had to have it translated. And I can't tell you how excited those children were to teach this American some Spanish. And they readily jumped up and they were all, teach me how to count to 10. And the thing that I thought was interesting was they had come up with a song that teaches you to count to 10 and then use the Peaceful Solution. And that's what they wanted to teach. And I thought that is a great thing, when they could have taught me anything. But when I came in, they wanted to teach me something out of the Peaceful Solution. And these are children that are 6, 7, and 8 years of age. And when you think about the inspiration that goes into that, here they have, if you've never been to other countries, a lot of people want to know what America's like. And I tell you, it's to the point, one of the children that they introduced to me, their name was America. That's what their parent named them. Because America is looked at as the the country where there's no problems. If you live here, you know it's not true. But when you live in other countries that don't have what America has, it looks a lot better. And it's like a lottery to them. You think that you've won the lottery and you think you've succeeded in doing so. But it was very interesting to see these children so quickly. And I thought they could have taught me anything about Mexico, anything about this country. But they wanted to teach the peaceful solution. And that's when you know that there's success being done, when children are very quickly wanting to do that. Absolutely. So we're going to finish chapter 6 here, and very quickly we're going to go to the note to the teacher to chapter 7, because chapter 7 is going to put together all that we've learned in this book so far. And there's a wealth of knowledge that we've went through so far. And then, of course, the teacher in the next class is going to cover exactly what this chapter is leading up to. And you'll see that the 7th chapter puts everything together in the first 6 chapters, and that's what it does. So starting here on page LP7A, so that's lesson plan 7, and it's the first page of the lesson plan, and it's gray tab, so you'll be able to recognize the lesson plans once again. And it says, note to the teacher, and this is, once again, it's only in the teacher's manuals. Your students won't see this, but this is a note to the teacher to prepare not just the teacher, but this is information to also give to the students when you're guiding them into the introduction of the lesson itself. And it says, we live in a goal-oriented society where children are taught from an early age to have some perception of what they want to be when they enter into the adult world. The more prestigious the future occupation, the more we as adults look forward to the outcome. You know, prestigious is something of high status. And that's usually in society in America is measured by money these days. If you want to know if your job has high status, they measure, well, how much money you make. If you don't make much money, it's considered low status. Even though the jobs that pay the least are the ones that benefit society the most, it seems sometimes. So that's a very prestigious job. If you're benefiting society, you have a very prestigious job. Well, parents share and give much support when their son or daughter wants to be a doctor, a fireman, or president one day. But how often do we impress upon our children the need to make moral character as much a part of their future as a prestigious career? You know, think about that. How much have we as parents? And then, of course, if you're a teacher in a school, you know, there are parents that are very heavily involved in the education of their children. And then there's parents that could hardly care less. They send them to school because that's what the law requires. And that's why they do it. And some people use it as a babysitter. They could hardly care about the education. Well, that's what a teacher has to deal with. And you, as teachers, you don't have to tell the teacher that's doing this full time it's something they have to deal with. They're very well aware of it. But we're helping them to get through this. So notice here it says in the final chapter, students will gain an appreciation of the importance of maintaining moral character in order to have a successful future and how to maintain a positive character in order to avoid risk-taking behaviors and other negative consequences. And of course, a risk-taking behavior is anything that can bring harm to yourself, someone else, or the environment. And once again, there's never a positive thing talking to a young person that's telling you how they know they have an infection in their body that's going to last them a lifetime. You know, if you've never had to hear a young person tell you that, I tell you, you can feel it in the deepest part of your stomach when you see the hurt and when they're sitting there going, no one ever told me. And you think, well, everybody should know. You only know what you're taught. And if you're never taught, you don't know. And that's the sad part in society. And that's why the peaceful solution will address the very hard topics that a lot of people won't talk about, STDs and abortions and so forth. Because we know that these are decisions that have finality to them, but you can make a different decision. We can make a different decision. Well, the last paragraph here, it says, as role models and educators, we have an awesome opportunity to play an integral role in shaping and molding tomorrow's parents and leaders. And that's literally what we're doing. We're either going to shape and mold or we're going to neglect it. And remember, it starts with us. A safe, peaceful society starts with us. The Peaceful Solution Character Education Program hopes to instill within the mind of each and every child, and that's our goal, that's our hope, is to instill within the mind of each and every child that the single most important goal they can achieve now and in the future is to develop and maintain a positive moral character that will not only benefit them benefit their lifetime, but that of future generations to come. You know, because you can be a doctor, a fireman. If you look in the news, you can be a politician. And due to immorality, you can lose everything off of a bad choice. You know, firemen, anybody. They can be very positive people, but without morality, you lose your job very quickly. So that's going to close our class for this week. This coming Wednesday, let me give you the exact date. Class will be at 5:30, and the date will be, I thought one of these young guys would have it for me. The 26th. It will be on the 26th. So the 26th at 5:30, and we'll join back with Benjamin will be with us, and we will continue in chapter 7. Once again, thank you for joining us.